Hey friends, today's video is just a small preview of the bonus content you can usually check out each month by clicking that big join button to become a channel member, or by showing your support over on Patreon. There are already over 20 extra videos waiting for you, packed with all kinds of wild and fascinating stuff. I really hope you enjoy watching this. I was 8 years old when we first moved into the house right by the forest. My parents weren't sure about buying it at first. They worried about wild animals getting into our garbage or hurting our dogs. And they were also scared that one of us kids might wander too far into the woods and get lost. But the house was cheap, my dad liked that it was private, and my mom really loved how the house looked. My siblings and I were just excited about having a big backyard and a forest to play in. The first strange thing we noticed was how scared our dogs were of the forest. They wouldn't go in at all, not for anything. If a ball or toy rolled into the woods, they wouldn't go after it. And if one of us kids went in, the dogs would get really anxious and pace back and forth until we came out. Sometimes they'd growl or bark at the forest, staring at one spot. But when we looked, we couldn't see anything there. My brother once picked up one of the dogs and carried her into the trees to show her it was fine, but she panicked, squirmed out of his arms, and ran back to the house in fear. Before we dive in, let me know in the comments, what country are you watching from? I'd love to see where our viewers are tuning in from. And if you enjoy the video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more. If we were in the backyard near sundown, we sometimes heard things like footsteps in the woods, sticks snapping, or branches moving. We'd call out, but no one ever answered. If we used a flashlight, we'd sometimes spot a shape or shadow for just a second that looked like someone was out there walking around. After that, our parents told us we couldn't go into the woods anymore, especially not after dark. Even during the day, we weren't allowed to go anywhere the house couldn't see us. My sister's bedroom had a window facing the forest, and she once saw something standing at the edge of the yard. She said it didn't look quite right, like it wasn't fully touching the ground and was a bit too tall and strange in shape. She was sure it was staring right at her. She screamed for our dad, saying someone was in the yard looking into her window. When he came out with a flashlight, she kept watching from her window. The thing didn't move, but when the light passed over where it stood, it was suddenly gone. At night, we'd often hear knocking at the back door, but no one was ever there. My parents thought it was just local kids playing pranks and stopped checking. One night, though, the knocking didn't stop and sounded more intense. It was pouring rain, and my mom said maybe someone needed help. She opened the door, but no one was there. And strangely, the porch was totally dry with no footprints. The knocking kept happening off and on the entire time we lived there. It would come and go. After a while, my parents got a security camera for the back door. They never saw anyone on it, but the camera did catch something. After about 3 years in the house, my brother started sleepwalking and having horrible night terrors. Every time he sleepwalked, he went out the back door and walked toward the woods. My mom, who was a light sleeper, would hear the door and run to stop him before he got too far. One day, my brother asked to see the camera footage because he wanted to see what he looked like while sleepwalking. The footage showed him going outside and pausing like he was listening to something. Then he shook his head but kept walking forward, like something was pulling him. One evening, my dad was outside and heard what sounded like my sister calling to him from the woods asking for help. He thought she went exploring and maybe fell, so he ran into the woods calling for her, but it was too dark to see anything, and he couldn't tell where the voice was coming from. He told her to stay put while he went to grab a flashlight. When he got back to the house, he saw my sister inside, safe and relaxed. He didn't tell anyone about it at the time. Months later, I was out with the dogs and I heard my mom's voice calling from the forest. She said her sweater was stuck in some branches and she needed help. I didn't think much of it, even though I had just seen her inside. As I walked toward the woods, the dogs barked like crazy, and my dad looked out the window and saw me. He rushed outside and shouted that Mom was inside, and I needed to come back immediately. I ran back to the house. After that, my parents put up a fence around the backyard and started looking for a new house. In the short time between building the fence and moving out, things got worse. The knocking on the doors came more often. We started hearing tapping on the windows like someone was slowly walking around the house, checking each one. We heard scratching on the fence and voices on the other side. My brother's night terrors got worse too. One night my mom didn't hear the door, and he ended up at the fence, just standing there, staring into the woods while the dogs barked at him. On our last morning in that house, which was just under 4 years after moving in, we woke up to find the back door wide open. The security footage showed it slowly opening by itself. Since we moved out, my brother stopped sleepwalking, though the night terrors continue, and he now has bad anxiety. A few nights ago, he called me out of nowhere. After some chatting, he asked if I thought the door being open that last night meant that whatever was out there finally got in. He was half joking, trying to sound light, saying maybe we all need to get blessed or something, just in case something followed us from back then. But I could tell it really still bothers him. It still bothers me too, to be honest. I get uneasy around dark woods now. I don't know exactly what was in those trees behind our house at night, but I can't shake the feeling that if it had the chance, it would have taken us. When I was 14 years old, I went to a church event on Halloween night. They called it Hallelujah Night. It was like a Christian version of Halloween. My family and I always went early in the afternoon because we helped set up games and booths with candy and prizes. But honestly, I mainly went to get first dibs on the candy. After setting up the booth I was helping with, I sat down on a bench near the main church sanctuary. I liked that spot because I could see the whole church lot and especially the sunset. I pulled out my PSP and started scrolling through music when a man walked up and started talking to me. I'm not great with strangers, so I usually keep conversations short, but something about this guy felt warm and familiar, like we were already friends. As we talked more, I asked him if he was new to the church because I didn't recognize him. He told me he had actually been coming for years but stopped after something happened. I asked what happened, and he paused, then told me that some people pick up on things that aren't normal and that it's better not to go looking into things you know you should leave alone. I was confused and didn't understand what he meant. He saw my face and said I'd understand once I got older. I looked down for a second at my PSP, and when I looked back up, he was gone. I checked around, but he was nowhere to be seen. Besides a few people still setting up for the event, the lot was empty. It didn't make any sense. A few months later, I was sitting in the main sanctuary, waiting to do my usual volunteer work upstairs. That floor was used for daycare during the service, so after church I'd help turn off the lights and make sure no kids were left up there. Just as I was about to go up, the pastor started talking about an upcoming funeral. Pictures of the person were shown on the screens, and I froze. It was the same man I had talked to on Hallelujah Night. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I was completely shocked as I left the sanctuary and headed upstairs. Another volunteer let me know all the kids were already taken downstairs. She saw I looked a bit off and asked if I was okay. I told her I was fine and went ahead turning off the lights. The upstairs area was just a long hallway with rooms on both sides and a door at the end with a big window. I always left the blinds on that window open so the hallway wouldn't feel too dark and creepy. But as I finished turning off lights and left the last room, I suddenly felt really scared, like something was waiting in the dark to grab me. I tried to stay calm and talked myself into just walking down the hallway. Then I saw a small child's head peek out of one of the doors a few rooms away. It stayed there for a few seconds before going back in. The fear I had just felt went away. I called out to the kid, but no one answered. I rushed over, turned on the light, and searched the room, but it was empty. The fear returned, and I turned off the light to keep going. Then something truly terrifying happened. As I looked back at the hallway, I saw a giant dark shape move across the big window at the end, blocking most of the light. It was blacker than black, and the shape seemed to move like it was shifting or alive. I was so scared that I ran down the hallway and straight down the stairs. One of the ushers told me not to run, but when I told him what I saw, he just looked at me like I was imagining things. After church ended, I told my parents what happened, but they didn't believe me either since they don't believe in stuff like that. But I know what I saw. It's something I'll never forget, and it still scares me to this day. In 1999, I moved back to Washington after traveling around for 4 years. My grandma let me stay in her house while I got things in order. I never liked her basement, but the rent was free and she didn't mind that I had Chuck, my big black Labrador. We actually got along really well. One night, about 3 months in, I woke up because Chuck was moving around on the bed a lot. He was shaking the mattress, then he started making that low, grumbly sound dogs make when they're enjoying being petted. I sat up, ready to tell him to stop, and that's when I saw it. He wasn't just moving around. He was leaning toward a woman standing right next to my bed, scratching behind his ear. I didn't scream, which honestly I'm proud of, but I was so confused and scared. Who was she? Where did she come from? Why was she in my room in the middle of the night? I didn't know what to do, so I did what made sense at the time. I pulled the blanket over my head and hid. I figured she'd be gone when I looked again. But when I peeked out, she was still there. I did that 3 more times. Each time I looked, she was still there, still smiling, still petting Chuck. But I started to notice something strange. I wasn't as scared as I thought I'd be. Chuck and I had a strong bond. I trusted him. If she was dangerous, he wouldn't have let her near him. He clearly liked her, so I figured maybe she wasn't there to hurt me. So I decided to face her and turned on the light, hoping maybe it would make her disappear. It didn't. She stayed right there, just smiling calmly. So I gave up trying to be scared and just looked at her. She had on a nice brown pantsuit and a cream blouse. Her auburn hair was shoulder length and styled in big curls. She looked like she'd stopped by on her way to a party or something. She was very pretty and looked peaceful. We just looked at each other for a while, both of us knowing the other was there. Then she stopped petting Chuck, walked to the foot of the bed, stood tall, and vanished. And I mean really vanished. Her skin, her clothes, even her bones all faded away slowly, almost like she wanted it to be dramatic. It should have been terrifying, but it didn't feel that way. I somehow fell back asleep. The next morning, I was about to tell my grandma what happened, but she had just gotten some sad news. Her best friend from high school, Ursula, had passed away during the night. I'd heard about her before, especially a funny story about a stolen birthday cake, but I'd never seen a photo. I asked what she looked like when they were young, and my grandma said Ursula had the most beautiful curly auburn hair. That wasn't the only strange thing to happen in that basement, but it was the most vivid and strangely comforting one. A lot of us meet someone who feels oddly familiar, like we've met them before, even if we haven't. I come from a family that has had lots of ghost encounters, but I don't usually have those experiences myself. I have a few, but not often. Tonight, though, something happened that I know wasn't normal. Our town is near a beach, and every year we go there for the 4th of July fireworks. This year was no different. My wife and I got there, set up our chairs in the sand, and relaxed while we waited for the show to start. It was a perfect evening, just a soft breeze and warm weather. About 20 minutes after we settled in, I caught a strange smell on the wind. It was like roses that had gone a little bad. Sweet, but not fresh. Then I saw her. A young woman walked by us from behind. She looked about 25, wearing jean shorts, a t-shirt, and a baseball cap. Her light brown wavy hair came down to the middle of her back. Right away, something about her stood out. Not because she was stunning, but because she seemed off. Her face looked pretty, but a bit strange, like her features didn't line up right. She stopped about 15 feet in front of us, turned to face me, smiled, and sat down in the sand. It felt like she was glowing, but not in a way others could see. I looked over at my wife to see her reaction, but she didn't even seem to notice the woman. I caught that odd rose smell again. The woman sat with her back mostly to us, took off her flip-flops, and looked up at the sky. As I watched her, I realized two things that were really weird. First, she had no electronics, no phone, no earbuds, nothing. Everyone else on the beach was messing with their phones or taking selfies, but not her. Second, her whole look was like she'd stepped out of the 1970s. The way she dressed, even her hair, it all matched the style from back then exactly. She seemed totally happy just sitting there, not worried about anything. I smelled the faded rose scent again. I took a picture of the beach, the sky, and her sitting there. Not long after, she stood up and walked away behind us. I turned to see where she went, but she had disappeared. Later at home, I looked at the picture I'd taken. I wasn't even surprised to see she didn't show up in it instead. There was a green orb floating where she'd been sitting. I didn't feel scared. I actually felt calm, like she wasn't there to hurt me. I honestly believe she was someone who died in the 1970s and came back to visit, for some reason, maybe even just to say hello. I keep trying to think if I ever knew a girl who died when I was a kid, but nothing's come to me yet. I still can't shake the feeling that she knew me somehow. We moved into a house in Northamptonshire a few years back, and right away we felt like something was a bit off about the place. That strange feeling of being watched and sudden cold spots in certain rooms. My husband started acting strangely. He would say things like he somehow knew exactly what I had done during the day, down to the tiniest details. He also talked about a girl, but only in his mind, like she was speaking to him there. Things around the house would go missing or turn up in odd places. One day he suddenly said the word gun goosler. Neither of us had ever heard that word before, and I assumed he was just making something up again. But it turns out it's a real word, meaning someone who enjoys watching canals. There are lots of canals in the area, including one right in the village. When I asked him why he said that word, he told me it was the girl. She had said it to him and that she loved the canal. The strangest thing that happened, though, was one evening when both my husband and daughter wanted to take a shower. They agreed my husband would go first, but while we were sitting in our bedroom, we heard the bathroom door close, the light go on, and the shower start running. So we just figured our daughter had quickly gotten there before him. The shower ran for about 45 minutes. Just as we were about to check if she was all right, we heard the water stop and the door open. We heard footsteps and saw someone go downstairs. The light in the bathroom was left on. My husband turned it off and followed her downstairs, watching her walk into her bedroom, which is down there. But as he entered the kitchen, our daughter came in through the front door. When he asked how she'd managed to shower and be dressed so fast, she told him she'd been out for the past hour looking after her horses. So who was in the shower? A few weeks later, my husband said he saw the same girl again, just standing in our daughter's bedroom doorway. Lots of other strange things happened there too, but none of them ever felt threatening, just odd and unsettling. We moved out of that house a couple of years ago, and after that, nothing strange happened, until this past weekend. We went on a trip to Cornwall and stayed in a hotel. On the first night, it was cold and foggy, and while we were standing outside for a smoke, my husband suddenly said, "Joan is waiting in the summer house." I asked what he was on about, and he had this odd look on his face as he replied, "Joan is waiting in the summer house for Derek." Then he seemed to snap out of it, stunned, and said he didn't know why he said that. We kept talking about it, and he said it felt like he had to say those things. He also said he felt like Joan had been in the military. As we went on talking, he suddenly added, "He's married and she's waiting in the summer house." Feeling creeped out, we decided to head back to our room. We looked online and found something shocking. Back in 1946, a young woman in the Navy had been stationed at that very hotel. Her name was Joan. She had been having an affair with a married officer. When their relationship was discovered, she was reassigned to another post in Devon. But on the night she was supposed to leave, she waited for him in the summer house, and he shot her twice in the head. His name was William. We were completely freaked out. The man's name wasn't Derek, but back then, it was common for people to be called by different names. Like my grandfather was named John, but went by Jack, and my grandmother was Grace, but was called Queenie. So maybe he really was known as Derek. Oh, I've always been really interested in the paranormal and have seen and felt a few things I can't really explain even now. Still, I consider myself pretty logical, so I usually just brush it off, though I do try to keep an open mind. But one experience really stuck with me and made me believe something else might be going on. My current girlfriend used to work at a cafe bakery in an old building in Bordeaux. Since she was the manager, she had to close up alone at night, staying after the others left to do the register and paperwork. The bakery had a front store area, a kitchen in the back, and a small office in the rear too. There was also a second floor, but it was only used for storage and staff changing rooms. The building was just for the cafe. Nothing else was in there. From her very first shift, she said she felt uneasy. On many nights, she heard running footsteps upstairs, even though no one was up there. The customer TVs would turn off and on randomly, and the doorbell at the front entrance would ring when the door never moved. And all of this only happened when she was alone. A co-worker she was close to also heard and saw the same things. I believed her because she's had a lot of paranormal experiences and takes it seriously, but I still wasn't fully convinced until I saw it for myself. I worked in food service too, so it was rare for me to be off when she was working. But one Sunday I had the day off, so I went to pick her up and stayed with her for the last 30 to 45 minutes of her shift. She gave me a little tour of the place. It felt a bit strange, but nothing major happened at first, just a few creaky noises upstairs. Then I made a joke. She was in the office at the back counting the register. I was leaning against the hallway wall, facing her, with my back turned to the front of the store. To my right was the dishwashing area. It didn't have a door, just an open entry, so I could see it out of the corner of my eye. As I watched her, I said, half laughing, "I guess your ghost decided to leave us alone tonight." Not even a second after I said that, a whole stack of glasses and dishes in the dishwashing area went flying. I saw it all clearly in my side vision. There was no one in the room, nothing that could have caused it. It wasn't just one glass tipping over and the rest falling. It looked like something had deliberately shoved the whole pile off the counter, like someone had swiped their hand through it. My girlfriend just calmly said, "I told you he's always here." She was used to it. She was nearly done with work, so we stayed about 10 more minutes. But the air in that place suddenly felt heavier, and I couldn't shake the weird feeling. That moment really stuck with me. There's no normal explanation I can think of for what I saw. It was clearly a reaction to what I said, like whatever was there didn't like being mentioned. I've had other strange things happen too, like driving through a ghost on a dark forest road, or seeing a school kid sitting on my bed, or my cats acting strange. But that bakery experience is by far the most bizarre. I'm just a regular teenage guy from Japan, pretty average in most ways, But for as long as I can remember, I've had these strange meetings with people that don't seem normal. It's happened many times over the years, sometimes with weeks in between, sometimes months. And every time it happens, I get the feeling that they meant to meet me. My most recent one happened while I was walking home from school. I was looking at my phone, about to text a friend who was supposed to come over to hang out. I looked up for a second and saw a young man walking toward me, maybe in his 20s. That caught me off guard because the path ahead of me is long and straight. I should have seen him much sooner, even if I'd looked down briefly. But there he was, walking toward me from the middle of the path, like he had just appeared there. He had messy but nice dark brown hair, green eyes, and regular summer clothes. Nothing strange. But the thing that stood out most was this black line that started on his left cheek and went down under his shirt, like a tattoo or a mark. When he got close, he stopped and asked me my name. I told him, and he said he had heard about me before. That confused me since I'm not famous or anything, but I didn't say much and just let it go. We made small talk for a bit, nothing special, but he seemed very cheerful and friendly. Just before he walked off, he told me I should probably wait for my friend. I didn't even get to respond before he turned and walked back the way he came. I thought about what he said and turned around to head back to school. Not long after, I looked over my shoulder, but he was gone, nowhere to be seen. When I got back to school, I saw my friend waiting at the gate. She told me she had been waiting there for a long time because she thought we were going to walk home together. I said sorry and we headed home. That was it. I never told her about the guy, but I kept thinking about it after she left. I never mentioned anything about her, so how did he know I was meeting someone? These kinds of encounters have happened to me all my life. Some of them happen often, others take months. And each time the people I meet seem too strange and always know something about me they shouldn't. That's why I'm starting to believe that maybe, just maybe, they aren't really people at all. I'm a 30-year-old woman, and this happened one morning after I woke up. I was getting ready for the day in our bathroom, which is connected to our bedroom. From the bathroom door, you can clearly see the bed and my 5-year-old son who was still sleeping. I noticed something the size of an adult walk past the doorway in the dark bedroom, moving at a normal pace. I opened the door a bit and looked out, but there was no one there, and my son was still snoring. My husband should have been at work for about 2 hours by then. I checked our security cameras and only saw my husband leaving for work earlier, so I figured it was just my tired brain playing tricks on me. I'm very pregnant and haven't been sleeping well lately. A few minutes later, I heard what sounded like a man humming softly. It didn't last long, and I couldn't figure out the tune. I also couldn't tell where it was coming from since we had a box fan running just outside the door and the bathroom exhaust fan on. I peeked out of the bathroom again and saw nothing. I wondered if I was losing it. I took a deep breath and went back to washing my face. The door was slightly open, about 2 or 3 inches. The mirror in our tiny bathroom is large and covers most of the wall from the counter to near the ceiling. It reflects everything behind and around you. The door is to my left, just behind me. If someone was there, they could have reached out and touched me. Then out of the corner of my eye, I saw something that hadn't been there before. Through the mirror, I saw a hand holding the door frame. It looked like a man's hand, right at my eye level. I froze. Then I turned around, half expecting my husband to be joking around, because who else would be there? But the hand was gone. I checked the mirror again. Nothing. Just then, my child suddenly screamed, "Mama!" as loud as possible. I rushed to open the door. Nothing was there except my son, wide-eyed and clearly scared. He wasn't even looking at me. I asked gently, "Who is that, baby?" trying not to sound scared. He stared off for a few seconds, then seemed to forget what just happened. "Mama, why did you say my name?" he asked. I told him, "I didn't, baby. Did you hear your name?" He replied, "Yeah, you said it really loud and you weren't next to me." I told him, I was in the bathroom. I don't think I said anything. I searched everything, cameras, windows, doors, rooms, closets, while shaking the whole time. I've always felt safe living in this apartment, more than anywhere else, even when I'm alone. And I deal with serious anxiety, like I said. If it was just one of us who saw something, I would have blamed sleep deprivation, pregnancy, or even night terrors. But since we both experienced something, I just need to ask, what did we see? This was sometime in 2014 or 2015. My girlfriend and I were staying at a hotel called Stay on Main. I found out later that this hotel had a pretty creepy past. We only stayed there because it was cheap. The place already felt weird. Anyway, we were walking to a parking garage nearby to get our car because we planned to go to Disneyland. As we were walking, my girlfriend pointed out a shortcut through an alley to get to the car faster. I didn't feel good about it and said we should just go the long way since the weather was nice. But she insisted, so I gave in. Right when we turned into the alley, I noticed a guy in a hoodie quickly turn and start walking after us. I told my girlfriend quietly not to freak out, but we were being followed. I told her to run and get help if anything happened, and I'd deal with him. We started walking faster to create some space, but I saw the alley was a dead end. There was no other way out. The guy was getting closer, hands in his hoodie near his stomach. I clenched my keys in my fist and turned around, ready to protect us. Right then we passed a dumpster, and I swear 2 men in perfect black suits with briefcases appeared and walked by us quickly. They said good morning like it was nothing. They came out of nowhere. They had black sunglasses, were white, very tall, and looked super serious. I was too shocked to even say anything back. The man who had been following us suddenly turned and ran the other way out of the alley. That showed what he had been planning to do. My girlfriend and I followed the 2 men back to the main road, but then they disappeared too. We looked around, but they were just gone. I still believe those men saved our lives that day. I think they were angels who protected us from something really bad. I still joke with my wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, about that shortcut she wanted to take through the alley. I was 7 years old when this happened, and it was during my grandfather's funeral. At the back of the funeral home, I saw a strange man just standing there watching everyone. He wore a neat black suit, polished brown shoes, and had curly red hair. I was sitting nearby, and he spoke to me. He said he knew my grandfather very well and was excited to see him again soon. He looked very pale, like maybe he was sick, though it could have just been the lighting. I told him I missed my grandfather too, and was looking forward to seeing him again someday. I don't remember exactly what I said. I was pretty young. It was strange because this man didn't seem older than 40, and my grandfather had been 90 when he passed. The man gently patted my shoulder, and I remember his hand was freezing cold, especially when his pinky touched my neck. Then he walked into the hallway of the funeral home and disappeared. When we got home, I told my mom and grandma about him. My grandma pulled out an old photo album and asked if I could find him in the pictures. I pointed to a grainy wedding photo, and there he was, same suit, same look. My grandma nearly fainted. She said that man was my grandfather's father, who died 45 years earlier. I had never seen that man before in any photo, not even once, and yet I knew it was him. I never saw him again, but the memory still gives me chills. My grandma was the only one who believed me. To this day, my parents think I made the whole thing up or was playing some kind of joke. Sure, here is a rewritten version of your script in simpler and easier wording, keeping the length and structure close to the original. So where I live in London, there's this outdoor gym I go to often as part of my workout routine. I'm sure a lot of you know the kind I mean, the ones paid for with public money. They're mostly made up of painted metal bars and frames, with pull-up bars and that sort of thing. Between that outdoor gym and the weights I've got at home, I reckon I've saved myself a few £100 on gym fees. I used to really like going there. It gave me a great feeling of community. That might sound odd coming from someone living in London, but the whole idea that we Londoners are cold and unfriendly to one another is kind of a myth, to be honest. But the truth is, I haven't even walked by that part of Kensington in almost 2 years now. And honestly, I don't ever want to see that place again. Let me tell you why. I was hanging from one of the pull-up bars one day, trying to squeeze out one last rep on my set, when I suddenly heard a scream. Not just any scream, it was one of those truly terrifying, blood-curdling ones. I know that might sound dramatic, but anyone who's heard someone scream like they're really scared for their life knows that sound. It hits you deep, like your body just reacts before your brain catches up. Your heart jumps, adrenaline kicks in, and it's all fight or flight from there. In my case, maybe thanks to a bit of a testosterone boost, I felt a bit braver than usual and chose to run toward the sound instead of away from it. I jogged out of the park in the direction I heard the scream, just in time to see 2 people running. It was clearly a woman running away from a man. It was late in the evening, during lockdown, so I figured no one else was around to help. It was just down to me, so I ran after them. I started shouting something like, "Oi, leave her alone!" The guy chasing her was wearing a hoodie and a baseball cap. I can still picture the way he looked when he turned around for a second, saw me, and then just kept chasing the girl like I wasn't even there. That scared the life out of me. I thought he'd run off the moment someone showed up, but he didn't care. It was like he was completely focused on her. Still, I couldn't just turn around and leave. I knew I'd never forgive myself, so I kept going. As I chased them, I saw them turn down a dead-end street. I don't know if either of them knew it was a dead end, but I did. I knew whatever was going to happen right there. But when I got to the corner and was ready to shout at the guy and step in, I saw something I'll never forget. There was no one there. The street was empty. The only things I could see were some overflowing bins and some creepy black graffiti painted on the wall. It showed 2 human shapes, no faces or details, just blank human forms like something a kid could spray in 10 seconds. They looked like they were just standing there staring at me. I've never had a panic attack before, so I didn't even know what was happening at first. My vision went all blurry, and I couldn't breathe properly. It was only when I calmed down that I thought to call the police. Even if I couldn't see them anymore, that didn't mean it hadn't happened. I called 999 and told them everything, then went home to shower and eat, thinking I'd feel better afterward. You can probably understand why I was so shaken. I left my name and number with the police in case they needed more info. And they did call me back, but not for what I expected. A uniformed officer rang me up, but it wasn't to ask for a statement or anything like that. I won't go into every detail of the call, but it took a weird turn. At first, he just asked questions. How many people I saw, where it happened, all the usual stuff. But then he basically warned me. He said making false reports to the police was a serious crime. And because of the new COVID laws, I could be charged for breaking lockdown rules too. I told him I was completely serious and wasn't lying. I explained I was out during my allowed daily exercise, but he just said something like pull the other one, and then told me they'd looked at CCTV footage. It showed me running alone down the street, no one else, just me. They basically said I imagined it. He told me if I made another call like that, he'd make sure I was charged. Then very smugly, he said I could file a complaint if I wanted and hung up. I sat on my bed in shock. It felt like a horrible joke. I was right on the edge of another panic attack. This time, though, I knew what was happening. I used a plastic bag over my mouth and nose to calm my breathing, like I'd read online. When I finally felt a little more normal, I called my mom back in Sheffield. I know, a grown man in his 30s calling his mom. But I didn't know who else to talk to. I told her the whole thing, every detail. And when I finished, she said something that hit me hard. I remember her words exactly. "Dean, I'm your mom. I love you and I'll always love you. But I think you need to get some help." She talked about how lockdown had taken a toll on people, and maybe what I saw was just a stress reaction. This was spring 2022, when everyone was still properly scared of the virus. I'd already said I'd had a panic attack, so I guess that made her even more worried. I knew she was only trying to help, but I didn't expect what came next. A few days later, I got a call from a doctor. Straight away, I knew what it was. It was a psychiatrist. He was honest about why he was calling. My mom had contacted him and asked him to check in. He asked if I'd be willing to have a few phone sessions to help deal with stress. I didn't know how to feel. On the one hand, it showed how much my mom cared, but on the other, the one person I needed to believe me now thought I was losing my mind. I was terrified. She had contacted someone who might even be able to have me sectioned. But there was one thing I knew for sure. I hadn't imagined it. I didn't make it up. I felt the scream in my chest. I saw the chase. I remembered the sound of her shoes on the pavement. I remembered how he looked at me. It wasn't fake. It wasn't stress. It was real. Still, I had a tough choice. Either keep insisting I saw some strange graffiti turn into people and risk getting locked up, or admit it might have been stress, take the pills they offered, and move on. In the end, I chose what was easiest for everyone. I called the doctor, said I'd been stressed, and agreed to take the sleeping tablets, Zopiclone or something like that. Just to be clear, Zopiclone is just a sleeping pill, not some kind of antipsychotic. I only took one, then never touched the pack again. I just forced myself to move on. I know it might sound strange after everything I've said, but sometimes it's just easier to forget. I know some people want answers, want to find the meaning in everything, but there's also something to be said for letting go and moving on. That might sound odd coming from someone writing all this down 2 years later, but believe me, every single day I wish I could just forget. I feel like a moth circling a candle, just waiting for the flame to burn out. If you'd like the second story simplified in the same way, let me know and I can continue. Sure, here is the simplified and easier to understand version of your script, keeping the wording length the same or very close and maintaining the original structure. I was born and raised Catholic. I believe in God. I believe in the devil. I believe in good and evil. I believe that the universe has an order to it, one that can be harsh sometimes, but one that makes sense when you look at the bigger picture. I'm also into stargazing. Some people say those two things don't really match, but no matter how far I look into the night sky, I'm just looking at stars, not heaven itself. But that doesn't matter to me. I don't think my belief in God stops me from enjoying some of his best creations. And really, there's no denying that the night sky is one of the most amazing things God has made. But there was one night when I saw something I just couldn't explain. It didn't destroy my faith. In fact, I feel like it might have even made it stronger. It was something no one, not me or anyone I've talked to, has ever been able to explain. So imagine being me for a second. You've got your telescope set up in the backyard, you're holding a cup of hot cocoa, and it's one of those cold, silent, clear winter nights that seem made for someone like me. You're picking out your favorite constellations, giving a little nod to the bull-shaped face of Taurus, and counting Jupiter's 4 bright moons. Then all of a sudden, your telescope lens goes black. At first, you flinch and pull back from the scope. Usually, it only goes black if something gets in the way of it. You look around and feel a bit relieved. There's no one standing in front of the telescope, which would be super weird and creepy at that hour. But then you start to worry because the telescope wasn't cheap. It cost $3,000. And it's not like you can just walk into a store and have it fixed. But then something makes you look up. And that's when you notice something that freezes you in place. The entire sky, including the moon, has turned completely black. I know this probably sounds like a cliche, but I honestly thought I was dreaming. I blinked hard, just like I used to as a kid when I was trying to wake myself up from a nightmare. But when I opened my eyes again and looked up, it was still the same. The sky, which just moments before had been shining with stars and planets, now looked like a big black ceiling. No lights, no moon, just complete darkness. At first, I thought I might be witnessing some rare, once-in-a-lifetime space event. Something so huge that scientists would talk about it forever. I felt a buzz of electricity all over my body, and the hairs on my neck stood up. I thought about grabbing my phone to take a photo or a video, but I couldn't move. I just stood there, frozen. Part of me thought a picture would just come out black anyway. Maybe I could film the stars as they came back. But then a terrifying thought came to mind. What if they didn't come back? What if this wasn't just heavy clouds? And even if it was, wouldn't I still be able to see the moonlight glowing through them? That's when real panic started to rise in me. I know it might sound over the top, but I truly began to wonder if I was seeing the end of the world. As those thoughts flooded my mind, I felt like I had to get inside. I had to wake my wife. I didn't know what was about to happen, but I knew one thing. If it was bad, I didn't want her to be caught off guard. But even as I tried to move, my eyes stayed stuck on the sky. I just couldn't look away. And that's when I saw it. I can only explain it as the whole sky shifting, like it was a giant sheet of black fabric that suddenly moved. I know that doesn't really make sense. You might ask how I could tell it moved if it was pitch black. But I swear my brain knew it moved. I felt it in my body like I was about to fall over. It was like some giant black wing passed over the world. And just as it moved away, the entire sky lit up again. The moon came back. The stars blinked back into place all at once. And that dizzy feeling hit me even harder. I stumbled back and fell down, like a little kid who hadn't learned to walk yet. Once I got back on my feet, I had only one thought. Check the internet. Check the news. I ran inside, opened a browser, and went to every news site I could think of. I expected headlines like, "Sky goes dark across the US," or "Mystery in the night sky." But I saw nothing. Just ads for blackout curtains and weird questions about when the sun will burn out. Frustrated, I called a friend of mine who's also an amateur astronomer. He lives up in Maine. But as soon as he picked up the phone, I knew he wouldn't be any help. He sounded half asleep, and sure enough, he said I had woken him up. I asked if he'd been watching the sky, but of course, he hadn't. He could hear something was wrong, though, and asked what was going on. So I told him everything. What I saw, what I thought it could mean, how it made me feel. I rambled a bit, but I had to get it out. Then he cut me off and said, "Steve, call me in the morning, man." I'm too tired for this. It kind of stung. He's a good friend and a fellow stargazer, and here he was basically saying he didn't believe me. But deep down, I got it. If someone called me with the same story, I'd probably be unsure too. I guess it's the same feeling Galileo must have had, discovering something huge only to have people call him crazy. The next morning, I checked the news again. Still nothing. So I called my friend back and told him the full story again, step by step. But after I finished, he said something that crushed me. "Steve, I think you should go see a doctor." That was the last time I talked to anyone about that night. Not even my wife knows. I still search online now and then, hoping to find someone, anyone who saw the same thing. I've looked for newspaper clippings, online stories, anything. I've called it the blackout, but I've found nothing. No stories match. No one else has come forward. After a while, I gave up and tried to move on. I didn't want to get obsessed with it. I didn't want to start thinking I lost my mind, but I did take my friend's advice to heart. I kept watching the skies, but I told myself that if it happened again, I'd go straight to a doctor. But it didn't happen again, not once. And I feel like if it had happened to anyone else, anywhere, someone would have said something by now. Someone would have posted a video or written a blog. I guess I should have done that myself. I should have made some kind of post years ago, just in case someone else needed to see it. I didn't. That's why I'm writing this now, to fix that mistake. Even now, I don't know what happened that night. I don't know what I saw or what moved across the sky and nearly knocked me over. But I think the only reason I didn't go mad is because of my strong belief in God. I believe I saw the hand of the Creator that night, or at least that's what I've chosen to believe, because the other options, well, they're just too scary to think about.